What up, guys? So, welcome back to the RMP. Almost forgot. This is episode 88. We're here to question the fuck out of everything, do a little bit of self-development. I hope you guys are doing great today. This episode was a little tough for me because it came last minute and it came in raw. And I hope you guys have the patience for this because this for me is difficult to do, to put something out that may or may not make sense and may or may not impact. It's not the recording itself. It's the presentation, the hitting the publish button that makes this hard for me. But I think whether this is impactful or not, this is a part of my growth, is understanding how to voice myself authentically and to make myself better through practice. And this is the type of stuff that runs through my mind most of the time. I don't mean to come from a dark position. I just mean to come into the world authentically in the best way that I can, not only to create some sort of impact if possible, but to be true to myself, to be honest with myself, and to know that not everything is unicorns and rainbows, and know that there's purpose to the darkness and purpose to the philosophy of my own mind, and knowing that if that's my internal character, then I can't ignore it, even if it's just a season, even if it only lasts for so long. Because if we force ourselves into one position forever, I think that we miss our potential to be whole and to fill this human experience completely, right? So take it for what it is. The title kind of gives it to you a little bit. I'm talking about the soul and sacrifice of men and what that means in the world today and what that should mean to men as individuals. And I think this same type of authenticity and individuality is important for women too. But with the position of the world today, or at least the position that's being portrayed, I think this is majorly important. So if you're a man and you get something from this, please let me know. Don't forget to subscribe and follow the podcast. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know what you guys think about all this random philosophical information that comes out. And let's make a conversation. I love you all. This is episode 88, The Soul and Sacrifice of Men. What's up, my freaky listeners? What do you do on a daily basis to be better? The highest goal in my life is to become my best in my passions, whether that be in business, in this podcast, in my social groups, in my relationships, and as an athlete. We all wear what we love inside the gym. We like to represent who we are through what we wear. And Until Death Barbell Company is so in line with who I am. For me, it's how I feel that makes me love my sport. And their apparel gives tribute to that. Their designs are epic and they vocalize the importance of strength inside and out. Until Death is a veteran-owned company that builds products for athletes that help us connect to our sport, as well as giving back to the strength community through those athletes and competitions. They support the intensity and passion for heavy lifting and the people actually living it. If you want to check out their one-of-a-kind apparel and see how they connect to the unique feelings of strength sports, go to untildeathbarbellco.com. And while you're there, use the code REBELMINDED to get 10% off your purchase. That's untildeathbarbellco.com, and tell them Zach from the RMP sent you. What does it mean to fill the soul? What does it mean to answer the calling that I think so many men are after? I think we live in a world where being in a natural state between our masculinity and femininity is almost gone. It's almost as if the world we live in now requires new skills that used to be natural habits. And I know in my own journey, I've kept myself from being somebody I expected to be, somebody that I wanted to be, somebody that I almost looked up to without knowing who he was. And I know that has a lot to do with my inability to be courageous and to step inside my masculinity. And it's something that I've been assessing, processing, going over and over and over in my head about what it means to be me, what it means to be able to decide and move and do things openly and vulnerably and without hesitation. And what I see now is a lot of this same behavior. A lot of men that don't know who to be. And to me, it almost seems like because of that, because we've got most men in a position where they don't know who they are, or they haven't had the access or ability to see that option, that they run around lost. And it almost seems to me like the more you hold a man back from his destiny, the more that you hold him outside of his natural state, the more that you ask him to be soft, the more out of control you make him, the more potential you have for that man to be unpredictable and violent and aggressive. Because you're holding back an energy, you're suppressing an energy that by nature can never be extinguished. It can only be changed. It can only be manipulated into something else. And in my own indecisiveness, as I've grown, I've built more and more of a resistance against who I'm supposed to be. Almost like the pressure gets harder and more contained as I try to keep myself open, as I try to find out who I am. And I feel like there's a lot of men in the same position. And what bothers me now is that there's so much dismissal, and there's so much hate, and there's so much disruption against masculinity. And tying all of these things together, men, masculinity, patriarchy, violence, aggression, that it's almost as if we fill in the story just by reading the title. And I think as a group of people, it's dangerous to decide that any one thing is only evil. And to think that only one person or one style of person, one type of person is the only one capable and the only one that is to blame for what that is. And I think it's necessary to know that masculinity itself is not a danger. That the so-called patriarchy is possibly the danger, but it's not built out of masculinity. It may be run by men, but it's not built out of masculinity. To know the health of oneself is to know balance, and to know that masculinity and femininity go together. They run a symbiotic relationship. And even in matriarchal societies, where things are quote unquote backward from what we here run or have been running, I think the misunderstanding is to think of an energy or a position as something as a whole, to think that the feminine is without danger, and to think that the feminine is capable of running without the masculine, when maybe the emphasis of a matriarchal society is more loving, more encompassing, more affectionate. But even the boundaries can't be held up without masculinity, without order, without fortitude, without foundation. These are the things that come with masculine energy. And I think the men of today here in our country are being conditioned to think that there's something wrong with their order, with their foundation, with their ability to be aggressive, with their ability to be strong and to be courageous and be decisive. And that's why I think we have so many broken men, is because men are afraid to be who they are. They've been shamed and guilted for who they are. It's happening in their relationships. It's happening in their groups of men. They can't trust other men even. And it's happening in society as a whole. It's happening within our lawful system, that men are being judged for who they are or for who they're capable of being. And I think the longer that we run down this road, the longer that we try to dismiss an energy that can't be dismissed, the more we create pain, the more we create suffering, not just because of the suppression of authentic men, but because we take away order, we take away fortitude, we take away the dichotomy and the balance of having two extremes and a spectrum in between. To have men not know who they are, to have men unsure of what to chase, is a disservice to all of us, to all of who we are, and to all of who are trying to make this world a better place. And I think in my own journey, I'm beginning to realize that there is no such thing as having all and being all. And I think that goes into expecting men to be something that they're not, for one, but also expecting men to be everything, because they run away from who they are in order to fill the space for other people, and in order to make others feel comfortable by giving up themselves. And Jordan Peterson talks about how men almost have a choice to be 150% of one thing or 80% of 5 things. And I think, at least in the way that I interpret it, is that men can decide to fully chase whoever they are and what they believe they need to give to the world, yet sacrifice their relationships, sacrifice their emotional balance, sacrifice their presence, sacrifice dealing with their pain, and completely work on performance. And in a way, I don't even think that's that inauthentic. It may be unhealthy by nature of man and by the necessary needs of mental, physical, emotional, spiritual balance. But I don't think that's inauthentic. And that's what I think we're disallowing some men to be. And to be authentic in another form, to be 80% of something in 5 different other things, is also authentic. As long as men are allowed to see that themselves, to know that those 5 things could be family, could be love, could be presence, could be community, could be a regular 9-to-5 job that helps them raise that family. And maybe in a more healthy position, but knowing that he will never be the full success that other men have been. I think it comes down to a lot of authenticity. I think it comes down to sacrificing everything that is necessary in order to become what your soul desires, what your whole being, what your character is after. And taking myself into consideration and repeating this over and over is that my indecisiveness has kept me from who I need to be. My lack of sacrifice has kept me from who I'm going to be, who I want to be. And I think it's happening all around me. I watch other men and see their anguish and see their misery and see their barely controlled frustration with the world around them. It's what Trevor Boehm calls the civilized world. And he created a movement called the uncivilized man in order to get men to round themselves better, to become the monsters that they need to be in order to be authentic, in order to be the men that they have always expected themselves to be. And I think to hold men back from this power, from this internal power, from this ability to completely be themselves, is asking men to be less than. It's asking men to be something less than necessary for society around us. I think the chaos around us is tied to this inability or this movement to change who men are, to take away their masculinity, to take away their foundation, to take away their ability to encompass chaos. So we create chaos. Chaos is created by the lack of foundation, by the lack of masculinity, by the lack of decisiveness. And it's a blurring, it's a washing out of our differences, trying to make everything neutral. And the weaker the men, the weaker the fortitude, the weaker the courage to stick up, the weaker the decisiveness to make things clear. I believe we are making weak men, and I think we are using powers like law and guilt and reprimand and pain in order to force people into something that they're not supposed to be, in order to take away this ability to have the black and white, the yin and yang that compensate each other, that are a symbiotic relationship, that balance each other out. I think a man's soul will never be free or full unless he can answer his calling. That calling that comes from the center. And whether purposely or not, the world is out there confusing the fuck out of most of us. Taking away our ability to see clearly and to be who we're supposed to be. And I think it's getting harder and harder to find ourselves because of the disfocus, because of the pressure to be something else, because of the fear of being something else. The inability to step into that space because of the repercussions. Right? And I've always told everybody on this podcast that I will continue to be honest, that I will continue to give my best and be as authentic as I can, and that this is what I see. Without great detail, this is what I see. I see very few men that are strong enough to stick up above the majority and make comments and decisions and take actions that are actually for our better. In a world that's conditioned to be soft, or is being conditioned to be soft, it starts to look like aggression. It starts to look like violence, when the manipulation of the world is actually the true, real answer to that. That an aggressive man isn't necessarily a negative man or a violent man. A man can aggressively decide. A man can aggressively take action for the good. When was the last time you saw a Superman movie without Superman punching the enemy? Right? Even war has had its necessity, its silver lining. And I think as we move forward, to all the men out there, I think that if you are feeling the pain and the pressure of indecisiveness, if you feel like you don't know who you're supposed to be, if you feel like there's sacrifice that you need to make in order to become yourself, you're probably onto something. Because when we no longer have anybody to protect the weak, when we no longer have anybody to make decisions, to be authoritative, to be courageous, and to face fearful things, when we no longer have men to stand between the darkness and his family, or to stand between darkness and his community, the people that are his children, the people that are his followers, then what is left? There is no barrier, there is no boundary that will keep chaos from overrunning. And I think I only speak these words in order to instigate, in order to see if men are capable of fighting for themselves in order to fight for the world around them. I think that our darkness, our current darkness and our current chaos is built off of the weakening of masculinity, the weakening of men. And there's a power to all things. There's a necessity to all things. And this isn't to diminish the feminine at all. Just as the world can't be run by feminism, the world can also not be ran by masculinity. We have to decide within ourselves that both energies exist. We have to decide that our authenticity is what makes the world. our authenticity is the diversity that we need. And to gray wash the world together will be our end. And men that are being kept from their individuality, men that are being kept from self-discovery, men that are being kept from their authenticity, is also making them immature, or keeping them immature, I should say, and is also keeping them in fear, is giving them a mindset that doesn't work for this world, that doesn't create action. I think when we all come together and decide that there's only one way to be, we will destroy ourselves. There's beauty in diversity. There's beauty in culture, in ethnicity, in race. There's beauty in how we decide things individually. There's beauty in our creativity. And to take a little bit of pressure off of men, there is this theory, which I think is probably very true, that talks about 5 different types of intelligence. To know that logical, mathematical, engineering type of intelligence is not the only thing that exists. That there's an intelligence of the body. There's an intelligence built out of imagination and creativity. I think there's 5 types of intelligence. But anyway, the point is that there seems to be so much that we're unwilling to do in order to become ourselves, including me. I feel it. I feel myself on edge almost every day. And there's a control that the world around me, or at least myself, has built in order to keep me from allowing myself to fall into that precipice, in order to fall over that edge, in order to become who I'm supposed to be. Still stuck in a idea that I have to show up for other people in the way that they want in order for me to be authentic, in order for me to be real, when it's actually the other way around. And I think, coming back around, a man's soul will never be filled unless he decides for himself first. I don't think a man can do good, can do real good, impactful good for himself or the people around him unless he can authentically decide for himself on who he is, on what his position is, on what he's going to do for those around him. I think maturity is how a man handles himself, how he accepts and portrays his masculinity and his femininity, how he accepts balance, how he can look at the world and use his abilities, his knacks, his skills to better it in a way that makes him feel whole, in order to make him feel like he's answering that call and like he's filling his soul. There's a difference between working for a living and working for fulfillment. And I think an idea that these are the same thing has been thrown out there, and I think it's destroying men from the center. I think it's dissolving men as they spend days and months and years being something that has never felt right to them. I've done it myself, and I know how hard it is to decide to step out of that, how fearful it is to step outside of that. And I only say this because I hope to influence and I hope to bring forth men's authentic calling from within themselves. I hope to make a difference in the mindsets of men so that they can be the strength that we need. They can be the foundation. They can be the decisiveness. They can be the clarity in which we actually need. Because the chaos that we have now has been mislabeled. It's not you, gentlemen. It's the lack of you. It's you being told to be something less than. And it's creating less control. It's creating this uncontrollable, abstract, dark entity. Because there are less and less strong men standing around the edges to encompass that chaos and to help hold its form, just as the shore encompasses the ocean. The chaos of the ocean is dangerous, but it can only go so far. The sandy beaches hold it together. It gives it its form. It gives it its ability to be stable and create life. And I hope that men are strong enough to see this within themselves, to see that they are the foundation, that they are the strength, they are the courage in face of fear. And it's about time we find ourselves. And if you feel like you haven't, if you truly feel like you haven't, I know you're going to have to sacrifice. I know that I'm going to have to sacrifice more and more day to day in order to become that human that you're supposed to be. And I know it's going to hurt. I know it's going to suck. But you and the world will be better for it. And I think that's the only way we can have all the things, is to be our best selves, our most real, authentic selves, to also give real impact, to be good for ourselves and to be good for the world, is to be authentic, is to come from our core and making the masculine decision that you have to sacrifice in order to become it. I hope you guys enjoyed this piece. This was a very interesting rant for me. I love you all. I love all the men out there that are trying their best. Keep looking up. Keep looking forward. Stay strong. And stay rebel-minded. Peace. Hey guys. I hope that all things we've brought here, including the people, have helped you change the way that you see the world. And if it has, then it would help us so much if you leave a rating and a comment on iTunes, or give any feedback wherever you listen to the RMP. Thank you for listening in, and don't forget to follow and subscribe. Question everything, my friends.